Ahoy! Welcome to Prague and welcome to another edition of the Mars Guide. Now, because of the new restrictions introduced because of COVID, I'm once again confined to home. So I'm recording this alone in the garden of my apartment block. So I don't need to wear a mask. And because I can't take you around Prague in this episode, instead we are going to mirror that famous scene from Monty Python's Life of Brian, where John Cleese's character asks, "What have the Romans ever done for us?" So let's ask, what have the Czechs ever done for us? What have they given us and the world apart from this beautiful city of Prague, lovely golden frothy beer, and Jaromír Jágr, one of the world's best ice hockey players and for many years the champion of the mullet? So some things that you may or may not know of that the Czechs have had an effect on your everyday life. One invention that has had a huge global impact, well, some of you might be using it to look at me right now. When I ask people for suggestions, they often say glasses, binoculars. At the moment, a very good way of maintaining social distancing on one of my tours. And actually, one woman on my tour, and I'm not making this up, shouted out in all seriousness, "Eyes!" I said, the Czechs are very clever people, but let me make it very clear that the Czechs did not invent eyes. So what could it be? Give up? Contact lenses, but more importantly, soft contact lenses, invented and developed in 1961 by the Czech scientist Otto Wichterle. Otto Wichterle was a brilliant Czech polymer chemist who had already worked on one of the world's first synthetic fibers, Cylon. In 1954, he and his colleague Jaroslav Lim at the Institute of Macromolecular Chemistry of the Czech-Slovak Academy of Sciences invented the first hydrogel material, polyhydroxyl ethyl methacrylate, which I'm going to refer to as HEMA. Initially, they were looking to create synthetic biocompatible material for implants that could be used for medical purposes in the human body. But during a train journey, Professor Wichterle had a chance encounter with an ophthalmologist who gave him the idea that the gels he was working with could also be used in the eye. So when they published their findings in the prestigious scientific journal Nature in 1960, they suggested that their hydrogel might be useful for making contact lenses. So why were soft contact lenses such a huge step forward? Well, the idea of contact lenses, or rather something that could be placed on the surface of the eye to correct vision, goes back as far as Leonardo da Vinci in 1508. Lenny realized the corrective effect of water on the eye and thought you should be able to correct vision by placing your head in a bowl of water. Of course, it was impractical, and it had to wait for the invention of the aqualung. But while people were waiting for the development of the aqualung so that they could see and breathe clearly in a bowl of water, people, including the French philosopher René Descartes and many others, came up with the various ideas that in the 19th century involved taking a mold of the eye and then manufacturing a glass lens that covered the whole of the eye. So an important property of Wichterle's discovery was that the gel used to make the contact lens was much more comfortable and healthier and only covered the cornea and not the whole of the eye. Before Wichterle, the plastic used to make lenses was made from a plastic called PMMA, the stuff they used to make plexiglass. So it's very rigid and it's not permeable to oxygen, which led to several eye health issues such as hypoxia, and that is the lack of oxygen getting to the cells of the eye. The HEMA gel used by Wichterle was transparent, free of impurities, and was permeable to oxygen and water-soluble nutrients. So all round, much healthier. So returning to the 19th century, the contact lenses they were making then were still expensive and not entirely practical, said to be very uncomfortable, and they could only be worn for a maximum of 2 hours. Further developments happened in the 20th century and occurred in the 1930s when they started to make lenses out of hardened plastic. But again, if you look at these clips from 1948, first the optician has to make a mold of the eye and then cast a lens that would cover the entire eye. Things improved a little in 1948 when Kevin Toohey, a technician, actually broke a plastic lens he was making, and he was left with a small round piece that he found fitted over the cornea and iris of his eye. He tried it and it still worked, so he patented his idea of corneal lenses in 1950. Again, given that it was an expensive, if not to say a painful process, it is not surprising that not many people had the time, or money, or desire to go through the process of having lenses fitted. In fact, until Professor Wichterle's invention, worldwide only 200,000 people used lenses. In time, His invention would generate a global phenomenon so that by 2004 there were over 120 million users of contact lenses worldwide, and the market was worth $8 billion US. Unfortunately, throughout his career, Wichterle came up against a lot of political opposition. He was imprisoned by the Nazis when the country was occupied during the Second World War, and he was removed from his academic research position 3 times under the communist regime. And on the last occasion, because he did not support the crushing of the Prague Spring, that is the Soviet-backed invasion of Czechoslovakia by the forces of the Warsaw Pact in 1968. In the late 1950s, the authorities again weren't impressed with these ideas about contact lenses because they considered it to be frivolous work, so he had to stop. But he knew he was onto something, so he carried on working at home. Previously, when using the hemogel, he attempted to manufacture lenses by the molding technique that had been used before for the plastic lenses, but it wasn't very successful. He realized that he needed to find a different way of forming the lenses, and that's when he hit upon the idea of spin casting. And so, with various combinations of his children's constructor kits, here it's called Merkur, in the UK Meccano, in the US Erector, and employing a hot plate, a bicycle dynamo, and the motor from a record player, yep, this is how people used to listen to music before the arrival of CDs and MP3 players, he built a primitive spin casting device, and it looked exactly like this. Okay, a bit primitive, but it worked very well, and on his kitchen table on Christmas Day 1961 he was able to spin the first lenses. The result wasn't entirely perfect, and with the thick yellowish material, the acuity, that is to say the sharpness of what he could see, was, compared to today's standards, relatively poor, yet the lenses were comfortable to wear, and they worked. And in 1962, using his spin casting machine, he and his wife manufactured over 5,500 lenses. At the time, he reportedly thought the low cost and high reproducibility of spin casting could make disposable lenses economically feasible, although it would be many years before that would become a reality. Wichterle's soft lenses were first produced in 1965 in Czechoslovakia and manufactured by a company called Protetika, which in Czech means prothesis, and the product was called gel tack. But the next major advances would come when the patent was sublicensed to Bosch and Lomb. At that time, the company was more of an optics company dealing in camera lenses and other optical glass products, though through their efforts the technology was refined, and in 1971 the first soft hydrogel contact lens, the soft lens Polymason, hit the market, and although Wichterle had patented his lenses in the US in 1962 and 1965, he continued to work with the various companies well into the 1970s. And of course, there have been huge changes since then. Gas-permeable soft lenses to protect the eye, the use of silicone gels, and eventually, as Wichterle had wanted, the introduction of disposable lenses in 1986. And of course, the advance doesn't stop there, as many now are engaged in trying to create the smart contact lens that provides a stream of information about you and your surroundings through the contact lens into your field of view, but without obscuring your vision. Sadly, Wichterle received no more than 0.1% of the money generated by his discoveries, because in 1977 the communist Czechoslovak government sold all his rights and patents at a very low knockdown bargain price to the USA, possibly because they did not realize the value and potential of such a discovery, and possibly as a punishment to Wichterle, since, as I said, he was an opponent of the Soviet-backed invasion here in 1968. In addition, in the 1970s, it all got a little bit more complicated, because there were a number of court cases claiming infringement of patents and copyright, so it all got a bit messy. After the Velvet Revolution in 1989, his contribution to science was recognized, and he was made president of the Czechoslovak Academy of Sciences, until the dissolution of the Czech and Slovak Federal Republic in 1993, and then he became the honorary president of the Academy of Sciences of the Czech Republic. And in 1993, an asteroid, number 3899, was named in his honor. What I find remarkable about Otto Wichterle, and I think this says something hugely significant about the character of the man, is that he wasn't bitter or resentful about how his discoveries had literally been taken away from him and given away. His colleagues' memories of him were that he was a kind, generous, humorous, and exceedingly modest man. After I finished telling this tale about Otto, I ask how many of my tourists are wearing contact lenses, and it's normally about a third of the group. I then ask if anyone has lost a contact lens behind their eyes, because it happened to me once. And then I say, how many of you have fallen asleep with your contacts in after you've been out and had too much to drink? Now, people are a bit more reluctant to own up to it, but to those that do, I say, remember, the pain of opening your eyes on that morning started here in the Czech Republic. So there we are, that's our look at contact lenses. If you have enjoyed this little video and would like to see more, then please don't forget to click and subscribe and press the little bell button so you get notified of future videos. Thank you once again for watching, and see you next time.